everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be ranking all my Juvia's Place palettes because I wanted to do another ranking video. I really enjoyed going through my highlighters and ranking them, but I didn't feel like I had any other really category that made as much sense because highlighters and eyeshadow are kind of like the two aspects of makeup that I have, multitudes of. I do have a fair amount of blush, but it's not even close to the same amount in number. And I was like, it's too much to rank all of my eyeshadow palettes. So I was like, what is one of my favorite brands and a brand that I have a lot of palettes in? And I was like, Juvia's Place. If you've watched literally a second of any of my videos, you know that I love Juvia's Place with my whole heart, my whole soul. I love their formula. I love everything about them, basically. And up with their, with Kaleido's kind of tied for my favorite eyeshadow formula. So I have 10 palettes to talk about today. And keep in mind also, I love all of these palettes. There's not one that I really strongly dislike, but it's just obviously preference. Which ones do I prefer over the others and for what reasons? Okay, so I'm going to do this the same way that I did my highlighter video, lowest ranked to top ranked. So the lowest ranked, I have 10 palettes, so the number 10 is the Nubian. So it's their original palette. I do actually really like this palette. It's a beautiful neutral palette. Gives very soft glam vibes, but a little bit deeper. It's just that I don't find myself reaching for it a ton. I really love how my looks come out when I use this palette, but compared to the other palettes, it's one of my least reached for palettes. It also has a lot of middle of the road shimmers, so they have some of their more foiled eyeshadows that are more of their traditional eyeshadow formula, but they also have a lot of more almost satin shades, and that's not bad. I'm sure some people prefer that. It's just not my personal preference when it comes to metallic eyeshadows. If you're looking for a good neutral palette, this is definitely one of the first ones I would recommend, just compared to all the other Juvia's Place eyeshadow palettes that I have. It's just one of my least reached for. And then the second lowest is actually the Festival palette. Now, I actually lusted after this palette for so long before I ended up picking it up, and I still really love the color scheme. I love the packaging. I still love the tones in here. It's again just one that I don't reach for as much. And I think it's because to me, this isn't a standalone palette. I do have to pull in other palettes to kind of complete a look using this. And I don't because I love pinks, I love oranges and reds, and this has all of those things. So I don't know what it is, but there's just something about this palette that I don't reach for as much. But if you do like bright pinks, bright reds, bright corals, this is a really good palette. It's just when I lay them all out, it's not one that I reach for as often. The next palette is actually again a palette that I really love, but it is the Magic palette. Now, I think the reason that this is rated a little bit lower, I say, is if I didn't actively choose the order of all of these, it's just because I feel it's a little bit disjointed because it is one half is super warm and the other half is super cool toned. So I have to use this palette in conjunction with other palettes or really plan what I'm gonna do. It's not as obvious to me how I'm going to use this palette, although I will say there's a ton of beautiful metallic shades in here. This Faso shade is such a beautiful duochrome, and this Buzo green down here is beautiful. Like, there's so many beautiful shades in here. It's just one that I have to work a little bit more to use. Although I think I'm going to do a video like revisiting this palette, because I think now that I'm more into color compared to when I first got this palette, I think I could do more than I have in the past with it. So I think that could be a fun video to like force myself to only use that palette for a look. So keep your eye peeled for that. The next palette is the Zulu Palette. Now again, similarly I think to the Magic palette, it's not that this is a bad palette by any means. It's absolutely beautiful. It's just that I honestly don't really use this as a standalone palette that often, which means that I have to like actively think about using this, so I don't pull for it as much. But I still do really love this palette. It's just that rainbow palettes aren't necessarily always like palettes that I pull for a ton. Although the metallics in this palette are like best. Oh, they're so beautiful. Like these greeny blue shades and this rose gold shade, stunning. It's just one that's not in my rotation as heavily as some of the ones that are higher ranked. Next up is the Tribe palette. Now I know this is a favorite of a lot of people that I watch on YouTube, and this is a really, really beautiful palette. There's so many beautiful bright green shades. This Ashanti shade, this like grungy brown with green undertones, is absolutely beautiful, and I actually will take this palette out specifically so I can use this shade. It's so pretty. It's just green isn't one of my go-to shades for eyeshadow. I really like using this palette, and I think you can get a ton of beautiful looks out of it. Green it's just not my go-to color story for eyeshadow. But I think it's easily one of Juvia's Place's most unique color stories, and it is really, really a beautiful thing. The next palette is the Masquerade Palette. I was actually very intimidated when I first purchased this palette, funnily enough, but I have actually gotten a ton of use out of this palette. It's so beautiful. There are so many beautiful, like rich, warm tones in here, and the jewel toned metallics in this palette are beyond, and I really, really have been into this year, particularly, well, 2019 I guess, using like warm toned browns in my crease, and then putting a like jewel tone metallic shade on my lid, and this palette is perfect for doing that. I think it's a really good palette if you want to get more into color, because it's really versatile. You do have so many like warm neutrals. I think the thing that bumps this palette down a little bit is the fact that I don't think there's quite enough depth in this palette. Again, it's something that I talk about all the time. It's just, if they had replaced one of these like mid-toned warm browns with a really rich, dark, like chocolate brown, I think that this palette would be perfection. It's just, it lacks a little bit of depth for me, and then I have to like pull other palettes to like complete a look, and so it bumps it down in the ranking a little bit, but it is absolutely beautiful. And if you're just trying out Juvia's Place for the first time, I would definitely recommend picking this one up for sure. The next palette is one that I talk about all the time. I use this just in my day-to-day life, again, all the time, and it's the Warrior 2. I think this is such a good, versatile palette. It has a black, a white, it has transition shades, it has grays, it has warm tones, corals, pinks. It's just like, anytime I think, oh, I need to deepen a look with a deeper brown, or I need like a gray, or I need like a warm toned, like deepening shade. It just has every single thing. And because I love Juvia's Place's formula so much, I just know this palette's gonna work. I'm not gonna have trouble with it, and I just grab for it literally all the time. It's so beautiful. Such a staple palette, and you do again have a black, so if you need to deepen up any of these shades that are in here, you can do that. It's so good, and I honestly think this palette is underrated because it's just like a palette that everyone I think would use. Now we're on to the top 3, and it's funny because when I look at other people's like favorite Juvia's Place palettes, I rarely find these to be in there, but these are like perfection to me. And the number 3 or third ranked palette, ranked third, is the Deuce palette. I honestly am not really entirely sure how to say that, but this is so good in my opinion. I love wearing pinks, I love wearing purples. This has that. It also has a deep brown, which is huge because I feel like my main gripe is always that there's not a shade deep enough in palettes to like really get the depth that I want. And this has it. Has a transition shade that probably would be a highlight shade on a lot of people, but to me this is a neutral transition shade. You have really like muted, unique shades. This like muted, like almost red is so beautiful. This mint is absolutely stunning. This what shade is this? Oh, the shade Tart is probably the best like white based shifting pink shades, like duochrome shades that I've ever used. It's such a beautiful palette, and again, I just really love that. And because it has that one deep shade, I think it makes this palette more versatile because it wouldn't be as accessible to a lot of people if it was like just this light. So you are able to get a lot of depth with this, and I just think this is so good. Next up is kind of, well, it's not controversial, but I feel like a lot of people don't like this palette, and I just don't understand why, because I love it so much, and it is the Siharan. I think this is such a good palette, and I feel like everyone that I watch on YouTube is like, I don't like it, it's my lowest rated, and I just love it so much. There's this bright coral shade is so beautiful. You have such gorgeous metallic shades in this palette. You have pinks, you have a neutralish brown, you have beautiful neutrals, but really beautiful pops of color as well. This black is one of the best blacks that I've ever used. This Kia this Kia shade is such a beautiful, deep, dark, metallic green. And I just think this is such a good palette, especially if you generally wear neutrals, you kind of want to dip your toes into color. This is a really good one, I think, to try. And it's very versatile, like I said, because you can get really bright, bold looks with it, but also you can make this an everyday palette. It's just so versatile. It's what I'm wearing. I'm wearing this in another palette on my eyes today that I'll talk about in a second. Again, if you've watched my videos, you could probably guess what it's going to be, but I just absolutely love this palette. And then the number 1 ranked Juvia's Place palette. I think we can all probably guess what it's going to be. It's the Nubian 2. I love this so much. I feel like I don't need to go on and on about this because I've talked about this so much, but it's just such a beautiful palette. You have a mustardy toned brown, you have an orange, you have a beautiful like berry shade, a deep brown, so you can get depth with your looks. You have really deep, rich metallic shades, beautiful jewel tones. It's just so good. It's so, so good. I love this palette so much. I reach for it all the time. This Kenya shade, this deep brown one, is my go-to like brown, deep brown. If I need a deep brown, I pretty much always reach for this palette. It's so well loved by me. I think also very underrated. Yeah, I just absolutely adore this so much. And that pretty much completes this video, everyone. It was short and sweet, but really fun. I always love going through my Juvia's Place palettes and looking at them and thinking about how much I love them. And I feel like I won't ever be complete unless I have all of their palettes. I feel like even if I don't always, I'm not super drawn to a palette initially from Juvia's Place. Once I get it and I get my hands on it and I start to play with it, I'm just like, it just every time opens a new world to me. Like, ugh, I don't really like those colors, and then I'm like, but actually I could be a green eyeshadow wearer, or I could be like a colorful eyeshadow wearer. Like, I feel like Juvia's Place really introduced me to color and made me the makeup lover that I am today. Like, I really like feel strongly about how much I love Juvia's Place. But yeah, and so that's pretty much all that I have to say. End of rant about how much I love their eyeshadow formula. I will see you next time. Don't hesitate to let me know if there are any videos that you would like to see from me, any brands that you'd like to see me try, or anything like that. Please let me know, and I will see you next time. Bye.